Books help us in mostly difficult time that you can solve your problem with help of reading book related to your problem. So we can learn lots of interesting things from them which give us power over those less educated. So they're fun to read, they're relaxing. You can also escape the miseries of life while reading a book. You can learn more about yourself and who you are and how you can make the most of your life. So today we will tackle about book. So a book is a number of pieces of paper, usually with words printed on them, which are fastened together and fixed inside a cover of stronger paper or cardboard. So it contains information, stories, poetry, and any other written and visual works. There are different forms of books, guys. As we can see here, we have hardcover books, the trade paperbacks, mass market paperbacks, oversized books, miniature books, the photo books, children's books, Kindle or digital books, the audiobooks, and last one, the manuscript format. So, we are wondering here how many books have been published around the world since then. So we can see here before the invention of Gutenberg's printing press in 1440, there are lots of books unpublished. So as of now, it has been recorded that there are 130 million books published since the invention of Gutenberg's printing press in 1440. So at this part, we will be discussing about the history, origin, and evolution of books. So before we proceed to the origin and the evolution of books, have you ever wondered, guys, why and what is the most sold book around the world? So we could discuss it here. So as we can see on the screen, the most sold book is the Bible. So there are 5 billion printed copies of the Bible around the world. Why Bible? Why Bible is the most sold book? So it has been printed in just about every known language, and each year since it was first written, it has been the world's greatest best-seller year after year. So as time marches on, it is continually printed on yet more languages. It has been translated in many dialects. So collectors of rare books treasure it in every form. So before we had books, we had stories. So storytelling was a communal act, retelling of daily life to teach a lesson, so instill a warning or simply to entertain. So storytelling was a communal way of sharing joy and keeping the dark or danger at bay. So this is how fairy tales began and how language and spoken word found its power. So if you are familiar with scroll and codex, it was originated in ancient Egypt. So scrolls were the first form of editable record-keeping text. It has been used in Eastern Mediterranean ancient Egyptian civilizations, and some parchment scrolls were used by several early civilizations before the codex or bound book with pages. So it was invented by the Romans and popularized by Christianity. So as we can see on the screen, the ancient Egyptians were the first society to use pages as such. So they did this by weaving together stems of a papyrus plant. We are all familiar with papyrus plant. Then flattening the woven stems by pounding them flat. So this created a page, which when glued together and it became a scroller. So in around 600 AD, the beginning of pictures began. It was all beautiful hand-sketched illustrations appearing on parchment, and these colorful, meticulously drawn pictures were called illuminated manuscripts and were wonderful to behold. So they helped depict the story or enforce the importance of the message on the parchment. So this was the beginning of picture books.
morning, everyone. For today's discussion, we will tackle the history of books in the Philippines and as well as the books that were published in Cagayan de Oro City. So, what do we consider the first books in the Philippines? The first book that was published in the Philippines was the book Doctrina Christiana, so we will dive in with its history. So, before the Spanish colonizers arrived in 1521, and we already have our own writing systems. The colonizers themselves called it as Baybayin. So the book Doctrina Christiana was attributed to Juan de Plasencia, although he might not have written the book himself, but instead he wrote to King Philip II the need for it to be published. Why? Because the goal of the book was to preach gospel throughout the archipelago. After that, Juan de Plasencia died in 1590. That was actually 3 years later before the book was even printed or published. The book was printed outside of Intramuros in the Chinese settlement, and it was produced by xylography or a wood block printing. The second book that was published was the Chinese book known as the Shilu, which is the English translation of a printed edition of the veritable record of the authentic tradition of the true faith in the infinite God. The next topic that we will be discussing is the history of books in Cagayan de Oro City. So there are actually two books who won the Cardinal Sin Catholic Book Awards in November last year, which is the book Handumanan or Remembrance, Digging for the Indigenous Wellspring by Redemptorists by Brother Carl Haspar of Davao City, and it was published in 2021 to mark the 500th year of the arrival of Christianity in the Philippines. While the second book won the spirituality category, the book is entitled Spaces, Narrative about the Mission of Father Angelo Calvo, CMF by journalist Maria Frenchi Carrion of Zamboanga City. The book was actually published in 2020 and won the ministry category. So what is the impact of books to us? Books gives us a sense of knowledge and values because it deepens our understanding and improves our intellect and makes the people aware of the various societies and civilizations across the globe. I'd also like to add that we also need to value our history because, as the saying goes, a generation will not prosper or a community will not move forward unless we learn from the events of the past. Next is, what is the influence of books to us? As you can see in your screens right now, we actually do have 10 benefits of reading books. First, it gains us valuable knowledge. Second, it also exercises our brains and improves our focus and memory at the same time. We also read books for entertainment, improves our ability to empathize, and as well as our communication skills. On the other hand, just by reading book, it also helps us reduce stress and improves our mental health. So these are our references. I hope you've learned something from our discussion, and thank you for listening, and God bless everyone.